Afternoon. I'm Spot on Weather meteorologist Matthew Euler. Welcome to my latest video. And in this video, I'm going to take a look at trying to get a feel for where have the winters gone. So the title is Where Have the Winters Gone? And I'm going to present some data today just to show you how the winters have warmed over the past few decades. So let's get right into it. On the overview in today's video, I examined the warming trend of winters across the United States with a main emphasis on temperature anomalies. I do show some snowfall anomalies in this presentation as well, and how that has changed with the warming temperatures. And I'm going back to the 2010-2011 winter season. And I'll show you some of those temperature anomalies over the winters going back to that 2010-11 winter season. I really believe that we saw a turning point for the warmer winters after that particular winter, the 2010-2011, which was a fairly cold winter. But after that winter, it just seems like a lot of us are scratching our heads each winter, specifically in the eastern U.S., like saying, where the heck is winter at? We have seen a clear trend in increasing temperatures. We've seen some decreasing snowfall because of those warming temps. And additionally, if you live along the Great Lakes, you're very much well aware of this. We've seen reduced freezing of the water there in the Great Lakes. So things are changing. Cold air outbreaks as well with below normal temps. They're still in existence. I mean, we're not saying that it doesn't get cold in the winter anymore. But it just seems like these colder air outbreaks, specifically in the eastern U.S., tend to come and go rather quickly. They're short duration. Now, I wanted to show you this interesting picture here in the upper right. If you take a look at this picture in the right, we have two boys. They're jumping off this area here into Lake Michigan. You see the background here of some of the taller buildings there along Lake Michigan in Chicago here, Lakeshore Drive. And this was in February of 2024, just this past February. Would we have seen this kind of situation, let's say back in the 70s or even the early 80s? Would we have seen this situation where, they're jumping in the water and, basically shorts and no shirt? I mean, this is, let's just say if I just showed you this picture in the upper right, you would be thinking that this was not February, would you? I mean, you would be thinking maybe this was summertime in Chicago. And this is just a stunning example of how things are changing. Here's some of the headlines that we've seen all over the place. And it's not just by, people just expressing their opinions necessarily. It's by legitimate scientific organizations such as NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Look at this headline. This is all factual information based on data. The U.S. had its warmest winter on record. Season capped off by the third warmest February recorded. Now, this headline was just recently released. This was actually the 23-24 winter season. It was the warmest winter on record. The world is already experiencing a record heat in January. This was written by Dan Stillman back on January 25th, 2024. Another headline, February breaks temperature records for the 9th month in a row. Why has this winter been so warm? Everybody's asking that question. Additional headlines, you're not imagining it, winters are getting warmer. And Melissa Hobson wrote this article back in February of this year. There's been declines in snowfall, which will have consequences for life across the planet, from increased potential for wildfires to rising water insecurity. And then finally, this is another headline I captured. Our winters are warming faster than our summers. This was from Andrew Friedman, author of Axios Generate. This was written back on March 9th of 2023. Let's now delve into going back to the 2010-2011 winter season. And again, I believe the turning point for these warmer winters, specifically across the eastern U.S., really started after this winter. Now, there were a couple cold, months in the winter season after this winter. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't just completely above normal. But let's go ahead and break some of this data down. Now, look over here. Like on these following slides, I'm going to kind of follow the similar format I've done in past videos. The far left graphic is December. The middle is January. and the right is February. So I'm using the meteorological winter months, December 1st to the end of February, okay? All right, so in December 2010, in the east, it was very frigid. It was very cold. You see, below normal. When I list these below normals and above normals, I am referring specifically to the Mid-Atlantic region. And so when you see these categorizations here, I'm talking about the Mid-Atlantic, okay? So you can see out in the western U.S., for example, in December 2010, specifically the Four Corners region there, it was well above normal that particular December in 2010. But look at the east and the purple coloring here, well below normal, 9 to 13 degrees Fahrenheit below normal for the Mid-Atlantic, all the way down to the southeast and the Florida Peninsula. You were 11 to 12 degrees Fahrenheit below normal in December 2010. Center here, January 2011. Look how much of the U.S. is actually below normal. Now, and I'm gonna show you how things have progressed over time between this winter and the 23-24 winter, this past winter. You don't see maps like this very often for the United States anymore in the winter months. You just don't see them. You notice how much of the U.S. is below normal in this purple and green coloring, right? So it was a very cold month in January 2011, again for the Mid-Atlantic, below normal. Only slightly above normal along the west coast. Outside of the Sierra Nevadas, the higher elevations of California. Over here on the right was February 2011. Things kind of turned around a little bit in the Mid-Atlantic and Southeast down to Florida in February 2011. It actually was slightly above normal. Not significant though. I mean like 1 to 3 degrees Fahrenheit above normal in this orange shading. And then Montana got really cold in February 2011. It got really cold across a large portion of the western U.S. here. One thing I wanted to note here at the bottom was this was a very rare cold December, by the way, December 2010, compared to what's been going on recently. I mean, we just don't see many of these bitterly cold Decembers anymore in the east. So it was a very rare cold December across the Mid-Atlantic, the Ohio Valley, and Southeast. You know, we talked about, hey, is it going to be a front-loaded winter or a back-loaded winter? Front-loaded meaning that the beginning of winter, starting in December, is going to be frigid, like below normal with lots of snow. Or a backloaded, maybe the winter ends on a very cold and snowy note in February. We don't see many front-loaded winters anymore, and I'll show you this. Now look what happened the next winter, 2011, 2012. I mean, my goodness. December of 2011 here on the left. Really, the only significantly below normal area in green here was in New Mexico and far western Texas. Slightly below normal across Arizona into Southern California, but look at all the oranges, okay? Above normal, and we're talking the darker orange colors here, we're talking 7 to 8 degrees Fahrenheit above normal for eastern Montana, North Dakota, eastern South Dakota, and Minnesota. Even the Midwest, Chicago, you were 5 degrees above normal, 5 degrees Fahrenheit above normal, December 2011. And then January 2012, my goodness, do you see anything below normal in much of the U.S.? Not really. I mean, this is the heart of winter, folks, January. And where is the cold at? I mean, seriously. Slightly below normal in southern Florida, slightly below normal in the Pacific Northwest. And then over here on the right, we see above normal conditions again for the Mid-Atlantic. And then also for the upper Midwest and into northern New England. I mean, my goodness, just a very mild winter overall, the 2011-2012 winter season. Looking at 2012-13 winter season, look at the eastern U.S., east of the Rockies. Oh my goodness, above normal. 5 to 7 degrees Fahrenheit above normal in December 2012 for Illinois and Indiana specifically, and then western Kentucky. That seemed like the hotter area. And then the Mid-Atlantic was above normal as well in December 2012. We're talking 4 degrees Fahrenheit above normal. Now, these are mean temperatures, by the way, so this is the average temperatures. You calculate the low temperatures, the high temperatures for specific days, and then you divide them by the number of days of the month, and you actually calculate the average temperature. And by the way, this data is from the PRISM climate database. In the center here, this is January 2013. I mean, look how above normal things were in the southeast. Atlanta, Georgia, oh my goodness, 6, 7 degrees Fahrenheit above normal for the mean temperature in January 2013. I mean, Florida as well. Orlando, Jacksonville, Tallahassee, Gainesville, yep, all included in that warming. And then you also had warm temperatures going all the way up I-95 up to Maine. Also milder above normal in the Midwest. And the only area below normal in January 2013 happened to be here in the Intermountain West. Slightly below normal as well in California. And then over here on the right, February 2013, below normal across the east, the Mid-Atlantic, 1 to 2 degrees Fahrenheit below normal, not significant. And then you had above normal readings. What is that? That's two. Now that's actually some 6 and 7 degree Fahrenheit above normals across parts of eastern Montana. And then over in the desert southwest, it was below normal again in February of 2013. Let's look at the 2013-14 winter season. In December here on the left, above normal, slightly above normal here in the mid-Atlantic. It got more above normal, more significantly above normal into Florida, 4 degrees Fahrenheit for that month for the mean temperature. Look how bitterly cold it was across the northern plains. You don't see this a lot anymore either, where it's like just super bitterly cold across the northern U.S., Minnesota and Wisconsin, the UP and Michigan. And it was also below normal down in the central U.S. as well, in eastern Kansas, Oklahoma, as well as North Texas. In the center here, we have below normal readings. January kind of made a turn here. January 2014, things got a lot colder from the upper Midwest, Ohio Valley, down the mid-Tennessee Valley, all the way down the Gulf Coast, as well as along the mid-Atlantic. It was below normal in January 2014. Meanwhile, it was above normal out west, pretty significantly. I was living in San Diego at this time, and yeah, I can attest to this personally, what I observed. It was a very mild and very dry winter. If I remember this correctly, I believe it was the warm blob had set up anomalously warm water temperatures, a marine heat wave, so to speak, all the way up into the North Pacific, and an upper level ridge, the ridiculously resilient ridge, just set up over the western U.S. the entire winter. And all the cold shots of air went in the Midwest to the East Coast in January 2014. And then here is February 2014. Look at this. Things got much colder for Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan. Northern Illinois, you were running 13 degrees Fahrenheit below normal, as well as Indiana and eastern Iowa. And it was above normal. It was below normal, slightly below normal, 1 to 2 degrees Fahrenheit in the mid-Atlantic, by the way. In February 2014, it was above normal across California, Nevada, Utah, as well as Arizona, New Mexico, and parts of western Colorado. Looking at the 14-15 winter season, things again start off fairly mild across. Look at this. December 2014, one patch of 1 to 2 degrees Fahrenheit below normal readings across western Nebraska and northeast Colorado. That is it. Everywhere else was above normal for December of 2014. Okay. And then in the center here in January 2015, the above normal readings continued across the western U.S. Look at this. Nevada, California, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Montana, the Dakotas, well above normal in January 2015. And the blue and greens spread into New England, specifically the greens, the 5 to 7 degrees Fahrenheit below normal across parts of northern Pennsylvania, northern Ohio, New York State, Vermont, New Hampshire, slightly below normal readings in the mid-Atlantic, 1 to 2 degrees Fahrenheit, and it was pretty significantly below normal across southern and southwestern Texas. And then finally over here on the right is February 2015, bitterly cold. This is a rarity here, folks. Bitterly cold in February 2015 across Massachusetts, New York State, right along the shores of Lake Erie and Ontario, 15 to 16 degrees Fahrenheit below normal for the mean temp in February 2015, well below normal in Illinois, 12 degrees, also Indiana, Kentucky, and well below normal all the way to the Gulf Coast. We're talking in this green coloring here, that is 4 to 6 degrees Fahrenheit below normal, 7 degrees Fahrenheit below normal for southern Georgia into South Carolina. But this is a rarity anymore, okay? Look how warm the western U.S. is. I'd have to look back, but maybe this was the warm blob winter, but this ridge out here was ridiculous. Again, I was still living in San Diego at the time, and they hardly got any rain all winter. There were water restrictions. There's water rationing going on in Southern California because they just weren't getting rain at their usual time of year in the winter. Looking at the 2015-16 winter season, wow, December 15, I remember this well. I was living in Eastern Virginia. This was extremely, incredibly above normal that winter. December 2015. You can see the brown coloring here on this legend. That means we have temperatures 9 to as much as 13 degrees Fahrenheit above normal in this brown shading for the mean temperature in December. This is an interesting little anomaly. How expansive in coverage it was. Northern Florida up all the way to New England, all the way west to eastern Minnesota, Wisconsin, northern Illinois, Indiana. Look at this. And I remember Christmas Day this year in 2015. It was Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. It was like near 80 degrees for southeastern Virginia back-to-back days. Oh man, it didn't even feel like Christmas. I mean, it was sad. If you like cold and somewhat wintry weather for Christmas, it was bad. In January 2016 here, things did cool off a little bit in the mid-Atlantic, but more in the interior mid-Atlantic. So higher elevation areas like West Virginia into eastern Kentucky and eastern Tennessee. It was about 4 to 5 degrees Fahrenheit below normal in the green coloring. But look at Maine. You in January 2016, the warmth continued. You were 4 to 6 degrees Fahrenheit above normal for the mean temperature in January of 2016. Above normal readings, 3 to 5 degrees Fahrenheit there in the northern U.S. And then, we had a little bit of below normal readings across the desert Southwest, Nevada, Utah, western Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, as well as the Gulf Coast, and Florida was slightly below normal. And then February 2016 here on the right, look how things warmed up across eastern Montana, the Dakotas. We're talking 13 to 15 degrees Fahrenheit above normal in this brown shading. Pretty much near average here in the mid-Atlantic, Virginia into the Carolinas. And it remained another very warm month across Vermont, New Hampshire, as well as Maine. I said Maine in this one, and I say Maine again in this particular graphic. February 2016, that winter, 15-16, Maine did not get very cold at all. Florida remained, ironically, slightly below normal. Here's the 16-17 winter season. This is December 16 on the left. Look how bitterly cold things were, how much below normal they were in the purple coloring here in Montana. We're talking 9 to 11 degrees Fahrenheit below normal in that purple shading. We had a near normal December 2016 in the mid-Atlantic, slightly below normal in Maine for once, and then a well above normal on Interstate 10 there in the Florida Panhandle, down 95, down Interstate 75, Interstate 4. All that area of the Florida Peninsula was above normal in December 16. In the center here, January 2017, we had below normal readings across Montana, Wyoming, parts of western South Dakota, Idaho, into portions of Oregon, Washington, as well as California, Nevada, and Utah. But look at east of the Rockies. I mean, look at this. January 17, well above normal. And, when we have these warmer than normal months in the winter, it seems recently, it's not just slightly above normal in a lot of cases. It's significantly above normal. When you're talking 5 to 7 degrees Fahrenheit above the average, climatological average for a month, I mean, that is pretty significant. And over here on the right, February 2017, wow. Look at the brown coloring showing up again, everybody. I mean, eastern South Dakota, southern Minnesota, Iowa, in much of the Show Me State, Missouri, Illinois, look at this, Indiana, Ohio. We're talking that brown coloring represents 10 to 12 degrees Fahrenheit above normal in February 2017. And then just even outside the brown coloring, look how much above normal Texas was, Oklahoma was. Only area below normal was Washington State. Eastern Washington State, east of the Cascades in particular, 6 to 7 degrees below normal. But the Mid-Atlantic was well above normal in February of 17. Moving on to the 17-18 winter season. Well above normal readings across the southwestern U.S., including California, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, western Colorado, eastern Utah, southwestern Wyoming. And then below normal readings across portions of northern Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, Michigan, into northern New England. A rare below normal month in December 2017 for you in Maine, Vermont, and New Hampshire. It was slightly below normal across the Mid-Atlantic on the order of 1 to 2 degrees Fahrenheit. In the center here, January 2018, look how warm the west was in this particular month, January of 18. And then look at the east here. This was an interesting month, specifically in southeastern Virginia. I remember this one well. I mean, we got a 10-inch snowstorm, a 10 to 12-inch snowstorm in early January. There was an early January deep freeze from New York City all the way down into the southern U.S. and the Gulf Coast. And there was a monster low pressure system that formed off of Jacksonville, east of Jacksonville, and rode up the coast and put a huge swath of heavy snow all the way up the coast in January 2018. I mean, this early January period really was interesting across Hampton Roads, Virginia. I remember it well. And we had a nice little snowstorm there. And then we had another snowstorm that followed the big snowstorm. So, yeah, it was below normal in the southeast and mid-Atlantic in January 2018. That's a rarity. And then over here on the right, we have above normal readings in the same spots that were below normal in January. Now it's flipped. to above normal readings for southeastern U.S., Georgia, South Carolina. 6 to 7 degrees Fahrenheit above normal in southeastern Virginia after a major snowstorm and a 4 degree below normal situation in January. And look at the warmth go all the way up the East Coast. We have below normal readings, 14 to 17 degrees Fahrenheit below normal, the deep purple coloring across eastern Montana in February of 2018. Moving on to the 2018-19 winter season. Here's December 2018 on the left. Again, a mild December in the U.S. A mild December, everybody. Mildest across the Dakotas in the eastern Montana. And then in the center here is January of 2019. Look at above normal for the Mid-Atlantic. Above normal in the Pacific Northwest, into Montana, into California, northern and central California specifically. And again, slightly above normal Mid-Atlantic south of the southeast. There was some below normal readings across Michigan into northern Minnesota and Wisconsin. And over here on the right, this is February 2019. Look how frigid things got in this particular month. February 2019, Dakotas into eastern Montana and central Montana, we're talking 20 up to 22 degrees Fahrenheit below normal for the mean temp in February of 2019. But what you got to realize is this trough digs here, the ridge builds here, and look what you get. In February 2019, well above normal readings. Florida, 7 to 9 degrees Fahrenheit above normal in northern Florida. Southern Alabama, my goodness, 8 to 10 degrees Fahrenheit above normal. Southern Georgia, 7 degrees Fahrenheit above normal in February of 2019. Well above normal in eastern Tennessee, eastern Kentucky, West Virginia. Slightly above normal, about 1 to 2 degrees Fahrenheit above normal for southeastern Virginia. 2019-20 winter season. December, you're mild again, okay? Above normal readings for a large swath of the U.S., central U.S., Midwest. I mean, it's all over the place. Extends all the way to the East Coast. Slightly below normal, just by a degree, though, in New York State, Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Long Island there. Not a significant anomaly below normal at all. And well above normal across Montana. Slightly below normal in December 2019 for California into Arizona. January 2020, where is winter, everybody? I mean, look at the eastern U.S. Look at the Great Lakes area, the Midwest, New England, Mid-Atlantic, the Carolinas, Georgia. Where's winter? Where is it? Unbelievably warm. This was a year, I believe, that we had the very strong polar vortex this winter. This winter season, a very strong polar vortex, which kept all the Arctic air bottled up into the Arctic, and it just didn't plunge into the U.S. very much at all. Here's February 2020 on the right, well above normal readings up the I-95 corridor, Philly, Newark, New Jersey, you're in there, as well as southeastern New York State, Long Island, New York City, Boston, all well above normal. Well above normal for you in the Outer Banks, Eastern Carolina, Charlotte, 2 degrees above normal for February 2020. The only area that was below normal in the U.S. was actually across Wyoming into southern Idaho, Utah, Colorado, and parts of West Texas. The 2020-21 winter season, we had slightly below normal readings from the Mid-Atlantic, Tennessee Valley, southward of the Gulf Coast and Florida, and also some slightly below normal readings across parts of western New Mexico up into Utah and western Colorado. But other than that, well above normal. These northern areas, you notice, just seems like they're warmer than they're colder anymore in the winter season. Montana, Dakota, 7 to 9 degrees Fahrenheit above normal in December 2020. Slightly above normal Pacific Northwest to California. And look at Maine again. Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. That's a common theme of very much above normal readings in winter months. 5 to 7 degrees Fahrenheit above normal in December 2020. Now, January 2021. Look how much above normal things were in this brown coloring. 10 to 13 degrees Fahrenheit above normal. Northeastern Montana, North Dakota, western Minnesota, and also central and eastern South Dakota. And Maine, there you are again, 6 to 7 to 8 degrees Fahrenheit above normal in January 21. It was near normal for the Mid-Atlantic area here. And over here on the far right, February 2021. Now, you notice the differences here between December 20, January 21 in the middle, and then this on the right, February 21. But that was because we had a major disruption of the polar vortex and a major sudden stratospheric warming influence. That resulted in the polar vortex being disturbed and weakened, and look at the plunge of Arctic air that came south. Now, this was I believe this was the month where we saw that snow in Houston. And they had a lot of problems down there with the energy grid, with the heating, lack of heating down that way to Houston and southern Texas. Like I said, they had snow in Houston. Look at this. This was the core of the Arctic air here across the central U.S., eastern Nebraska, eastern Kansas, Oklahoma City, 11 to 12 to 13 degrees Fahrenheit below normal. Spread east a little bit there into Iowa, into northwestern Illinois, 11 to 12 degrees Fahrenheit below normal. Look at the purple coloring. So this was a case where the polar vortex played into this month and sent an extremely cold Arctic air mass south. And look at this fine line here, this green coloring, and then this light blue in the mid-Atlantic along the coast. That cold Arctic air just could not get over the Appalachian Mountains. It just couldn't spill over. This was very disappointing for those of us living in the Carolinas and Virginia that like winter weather, because this Arctic air just stayed to the west the whole entire month of February, just teasing us. 2021-22 winter season. Look at December 21. I mean, seriously. Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, northwestern Alabama, central and western Tennessee, central and western Kentucky, southern Indiana, southern Illinois, all of it, Missouri. 10 to 12 degrees Fahrenheit above normal in December of 21. Mid-Atlantic was above normal as well. We're talking 5 to 6 degrees, 7 degrees Fahrenheit above normal out towards Winchester, Virginia. I mean, this was a very mild December, which we're getting quite accustomed to anymore, honestly. Here in the center, January 22, things turned a little bit now. Got colder in the Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, eastern Iowa, northern Illinois. Got colder in the western New York State. I also got colder in the Maine for a change. And also was slightly below normal, 1 to 3 degrees Fahrenheit below normal in the mid-Atlantic, as well as 1 to 2 to 3 degrees Fahrenheit below normal across Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. Slightly above normal in January 22 there on the west coast. And then finally over here on the right, we see February of 2022. Things got milder along the east coast. Generally 2 to 4 degrees Fahrenheit above normal from Georgia up to the Carolinas to Virginia. And then 1 to 2 degrees Fahrenheit above normal Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Maine. Below normal readings across northern Minnesota and the eastern portions of North Dakota, as well as northern Wisconsin and the UP of Michigan. And then below normal readings here in the green coloring, 4 to 6 degrees Fahrenheit below normal in February 2022 across eastern New Mexico, much of the state of Texas, as well as much of the state of Oklahoma, southwestern Kansas, eastern Colorado, right on up the higher elevations, the Rockies there, into Wyoming. Here's the 2022-23 winter season now, showing a December that's actually cooler than normal. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. I say that, of course, very sarcastically, because a lot of Decembers anymore, just they don't seem very cold. But you do see the very cold readings in December 22 here across portions of Montana into North Dakota, purple coloring, which on our scale here is about 10 to 12 degrees Fahrenheit below normal, that deep purple. We see a warmer than normal Maine again in December of 22, okay? We're talking 5 to 7 degrees Fahrenheit above normal in Maine, 1 to 3 degrees Fahrenheit above normal Vermont and New Hampshire, about 1 to 2 degrees Fahrenheit above normal for you in Boston and Hartford, and then see slightly below normal readings, 1 to 3 degrees Fahrenheit below normal readings across the mid-Atlantic, and then just slightly above normal readings across Texas, New Mexico, into eastern Arizona, as well as Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, 1 to 3 degrees Fahrenheit above normal in December 22. And then here is above normal readings for the mid-Atlantic for January of 2023. Now, this was a very toasty month. I mean, you can see all the brown coloring here, 9 to 12 degrees Fahrenheit above normal for a large area from the lower portion of Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York State, up into New England. Maine, you're 9 to 10 degrees Fahrenheit above normal. Vermont, New Hampshire, 10 to 12 degrees Fahrenheit above normal in January of 2023. The only cool spot really was out over the southwestern U.S. And then over here on the right, we have a very warm February of 2023. That was that picture of the boys I showed jumping into the water in Lake Michigan there in Chicago. This was February 2023, okay? The warmest temperatures were centered over the Appalachian area down to the southeast, as well as the mid-Atlantic coast to Virginia and New Jersey. 6 to 7 to 8 degrees Fahrenheit above normal from the mean temperature of February 2023. Very much colder, though, across the Intermountain West, ski country areas here, Utah, as well as Nevada and California. Now, what made this special for the winter of 22-23? The average temp for the contiguous U.S. was 34.9 degrees Fahrenheit. This was 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit above the average. So pretty significant for the entire U.S. And then finally, the most recent winter, 2023-24 winter season. December 2023, I went up to New York City on a little vacation time. I was so disappointed. I was like, I'm going up to New York. I'm going north in latitude from Virginia. I'm bound to get a couple flakes of snow, right? Wrong. The daily temperatures they were generally, the highs were in the 40s. I would say mid to upper 40s almost every day I was up there. And I mean, you see how warm New York finished for December of 23. You see how warm it was in Maine again? My goodness, 6 to 7 degrees Fahrenheit above normal. And then over here, it's a pretty sad state of affairs when the areas that typically get cold first, kind of like the cold air, the Arctic air comes from Canada into the U.S. When the whole northern U.S. is like 12 to 14 degrees Fahrenheit above normal, you probably aren't going to have a very cold month. The western U.S. was above normal. I mean, there's no blue coloring at all in December 23 at all on this map. And then over here in the middle, January 2024, we finally got some colder temperatures, but they were all centered in the central U.S. You might have recalled the playoff game of the Kansas City Chiefs and Miami Dolphins, where the wind chills were just absurd. The air temperature was just insanely cold for that playoff game. Yeah, I believe that was in January, mid-January. And yeah, I mean, Kansas City finished 4 degrees Fahrenheit below normal for the mean. But that's where the cold centered itself from Nebraska, southward in Kansas, eastern Oklahoma, and northeast Texas. That was it. The upper Midwest, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, as well as the same areas in New England, northern New England, well above normal yet again, slightly above normal across parts of eastern Virginia. Now, we did have a polar vortex, southern sun stratospheric warming influence as well, causing some of these colder temperatures in January 24. Over here on the right, February 24, look what happened. I mean, it went extremely above normal across the Dakotas, eastern Nebraska, eastern Kansas, as well as Missouri, Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois. Look at this. Just crazy above normal. All right, so the 23-24 winter season, I decided just to throw this out there. All right, this was the warmest winter on record for the U.S. The average temperature in the 23-24, this most recent winter season, was 37.6 degrees Fahrenheit, with 5.4 degrees Fahrenheit above average. Like I tell you, I mean, we're not just talking 1 to 2 degrees above normal. We're talking 5 degrees above normal for the entire contiguous U.S., the lower 48. And I mean, Minnesota, I mean, they're talking about, in the past, they had a lot of like ice events or winter type festivals in Minnesota. This is very troublesome in the future if this continues because, I mean, we're looking at 11 to 12 degrees Fahrenheit above normal for the state of Minnesota. Those kind of traditions are just Wisconsin the same. I mean, I recall growing up in Illinois, and I mean, people would go up into Wisconsin and do a lot of snowmobiling, right? Have recreational winter festivities. If this continues, it's just not going to happen much more longer in the future. If you look at Maine again, I mean, 6 to 7 degrees above normal for the entire winter, this most recent winter. I mean, Vermont, New Hampshire, we're talking 6 to 8 degrees Fahrenheit above normal. New York State, 7. PA, 5 to 7 above normal. Ohio, 6 to 8 degrees above normal. Illinois, 6 to 8 degrees above normal. I mean, Mid-Atlantic here, we were 2 to 3 degrees above normal for the entire winter. But where is the blue coloring here? Where's the below normal temperature anomalies? I mean, for the entire winter, they're just not there. So now that I've gone back and shown you those temperature anomalies going back to that 2010-2011 winter, let's take a look at some of this data here. This is Brian Brett Schneider's data. So he shares frequently this type of data on X. Now, this is what he used the ECMWF, the ERA 5. You can see the legend here on this graphic on the left. So blue is December to February, green would be March to May, and then the red would be the summertime, June to August. If you see a brown coloring, that is September to November, the fall months. So which season has the greatest warming trend? Now, this is from 1973 to 2022. It doesn't include last year, 23, but this is a telling graphic. All this blue coloring is the winter months. All blue is winter. And you clearly see central U.S., the Midwest, the Deep South, the Mid-Atlantic, the New England, that is clearly has winter as the season with the greatest warming. And then summers have got hotter out over Montana, parts of the Dakotas, Wyoming into Idaho, and the Pacific Northwest has been getting hotter in the summer seasons, as well as Northern California, Northern Nevada, Utah, parts of Wyoming, parts of Colorado, Western Texas has got hotter in the summer seasons. And really the far desert Southwest areas have shown a warming trend in the spring, March to May period. But this is really, really alarming to see this blue color. It just the wide area in the eastern U.S. that it covers, with winter being the season with greatest warming. Now over here on the right, this was something that was recently shared, going all the way out through the 23-24 season. This was the ERA 5 reanalysis. This is the lower 48 U.S. temperature change, okay, in the winter season, December through February, those months. So we're going from 1974-75 winter through the 23-24 winter season, the most recent one. Again, this is from Brian Brettschneider. Look at how alarming that is. I mean, we're talking lower 48 change overall to warming in the winter from 74-75 to now is 3.4 degrees Fahrenheit across the entire U.S. But if you look at this darker maroon coloring, that indicates winters have warmed 4.5 degrees Fahrenheit for Chicago, down to Houston, over to Atlanta, everybody in the Mid-Atlantic, Richmond, Charlotte, up to Columbia, South Carolina, Washington, D.C., New York City, Boston, up to New England. I mean, look at this wide area of real estate. Has warmed 4.5 degrees Fahrenheit in the winter season since the 74-75 winter. Overall, this tells us that winter is warming the fastest for the eastern U.S. Here is a change in average winter temperature from 1970 to 2023. Now, this one I pulled from Axios. This is showing the legend here in the upper left, the different shading of the colors. When you see the deep, darkest brown colors on this, that means a +4 degree change in temperature from the winter of 1970 to 2023. And again, let's just break this down. Minnesota, Wisconsin, parts of Indiana, Ohio, lower Michigan, western Kentucky, central and western Tennessee, all of the New England area, New York State, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Long Island, New Jersey, Delmarva, you all are in the darker brown shading. That means you have warmed in excess of 4 degrees Fahrenheit in the winter season since 1970. If you look at the next tone of brown here, the lighter brown coloring, not the darkest brown, the lighter one, that indicates 3 to 4 degree Fahrenheit rise in temperature over the winter seasons. And that includes those that live here in Eastern Virginia, as well as a lot of the Carolinas, Florida, Mississippi, Alabama, as well as Louisiana, a lot of the Midwest, Missouri, a lot of Illinois, Iowa, the Dakotas. And then you see the winters haven't warmed as significantly across the Intermountain West or California, but I mean, we're still in the orange coloring here. We're still talking 2 to 3 degrees Fahrenheit warming since 1970, so it's no slouch to really think about. Now, let's look at the temp anomalies in other seasons. This is also, both these graphics are from Brian Brettschneider. So Brian Brettschneider put this together, the climatologist. This is the ERA 5 reanalysis. This is temperature trends on the left for the summer months, June through August, meteorological summer from 1974 to 23. And you do see warming all over the U.S., but the most significant warming is this deeper red coloring here, maroon coloring, over the western U.S., Washington, Idaho, Nevada, Utah, all the way down to West Texas, southwestern Texas, and northern Mexico. We're talking 4.5 degree Fahrenheit warmings in these colors here, the maroons and the reddish coloring. And then, most of the rest of the U.S. is this lighter yellow shading, which is 1.5 to 2.5 degree Fahrenheit increase in temperatures in the June to August period, but it's not as significant out west. If you look over here on the right, temperature trends for the meteorological fall, September to November, and you do see some warming tendencies for the fall season too. Now, many would comment that winter is starting later and ending later. So, I've heard some, people saying maybe we should reclassify winter months to go from January to March, and leave December and the fall months the way the trends have been going with the temperature anomalies, how mild December's have been. But it just kind of shows you, and you can look at the scale here, for the fall months from 74 to 2023, the darker the coloring, the greatest the warming, and you can correlate that with this legend here in the bottom on the areas that have warmed the greatest. All right, so the contiguous U.S. average temperature, this is data from NOAA, I'm going to break down the meteorological winter months. Here's December. So we're going back to 1895 all the way to 2023. Okay. And on the vertical scale here, I have the temperatures ranging, the average temperatures ranging from 24 degrees Fahrenheit up to 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So you look at 1895, the early 1900s, generally right up to about, I would say, the early 1930s. You did have some significantly colder than normal months, well below this black horizontal line, by the way, represents the average for the U.S., which that mean is from 1901 to 2000, so it's a little outdated, but it shows you anything below the solid black line means a colder than normal December. Anything above the black line is a warmer than normal December. So we clearly see back in the early 1900s, hey, you know what? We had some colder than normal winters. I mean, some were pretty significantly colder than normal. Then we start seeing a little bit, getting close to the late 1920s, we start seeing a couple spikes here of milder winters for the U.S. Then it kind of cooled off again in the early 30s. Then it started getting warmer again. The trends in 1935 to 1940, you're seeing some more above normal tendencies of the average U.S. temp. A little bit of colder winter there in 1945. And then kind of back and forth. We had a significantly cold winter back in the early 1960s, specifically 1963 stands out as a very cold winter, specifically December. And then, you see this major drop off in the early 1980s. That might be 1983 there. The cool thing about the website is you can actually scroll over these areas and it tells you what year it was. But I believe this was like 1983. It was significantly below normal. The average temp finished below 26 degrees Fahrenheit, the average temp for the U.S. that month in December 83. We had that major polar express outbreak, the Siberian Express around Christmas. And then you kind of just see the tendencies again. So, but now look from the early 90s to present. All right. Let me just draw a line here. Okay. From the early 90s, let's see if I can find it here. There we go. So from the early 90s to present, look at the slope of this line. I mean, it's clearly a positive slope. It's clearly trending to warmer Decembers, isn't it? The last below normal December that we had, looks like it was right in here. That might have been in that, it wasn't 2010, 2011. That might have been 13. But again, we already looked at those temperature anomalies, but I want you to pay attention to these trends here. Look how much above normal Decembers are these days. Generally going back to the late 90s. Here's January contiguous U.S. temps. All right, so you had a nice little drop off here this was the very cold times of the late 1970s, those cold winters of the late 70s, and then things really rebounded in the early 80s. I mean, early 80s to the late 80s. Look at the climb here. In a lot of cases, there were a couple below normal winters. Don't get me wrong here. But a lot more tendency. I'm looking at the frequency of above normal versus below normal here. And then, January's. This is your average temp right here, that black line, remember? And look at this. Look how everything is pretty much above normal, above this black solid line. Generally from 1995 to present for January. February, the contiguous U.S. average temperatures. Again, when you're talking the late 1800s into the early 1900s, it was quite a distinct period of below normal Februaries. And then we had an above normal time period from, was that about early 1920s through about 1935. And then we saw a major drop off just after 1935. We have a peak here. That was a pretty significantly warm winter there, just shy of 1955. And then, you see a very big drop off here in the late 70s again with those very cold winters. But in general, February, we've had quite a bit of peaks here in these years. And then we did have a couple below normal, slightly below normal there in the early 2000s, more significantly below normal in that particular year. But in general, the tendency is you're seeing a lot more above normal months. Here is the whole entire meteorological winter, the U.S. average temperature of the contiguous U.S. Again, the late 1800s and early 1900s, we had a lot of winters that were below normal in temperatures. We had one heck of a below normal winter in the late 1970s again. And then, but look what's happening here. How many of these winters since about, would that be like 1983, 84? After 83, look how many above normal winters we've had, okay? Above average in temperature across the whole entire US. Concluding with this one here, the 2024 winter season clearly stands out as the warmest on record, going back to 1895. Now, let's break down some of the US cities, all right, and how they've warmed recently. Let's start with New York City. This, by the way, is courtesy of Climate Central, all right? So, this data here is only going to go out to 2019. But you can go to their website, Climate Central, just Google it, and you can get some really good products from them. But I just wanted to show you from 1970 to 2019, the kind of positive slope we have, or climb in the average temperatures, 3.2 degrees warmer from 1970 to 2019 in New York City. I mean, how many people in New York are just like, man, where is the snow? I used to love the winters when I was a young kid. I used to love going out and playing in the snow. It's just not a guarantee anymore to happen. Look at Atlanta, Georgia. This is even more significant warming. From 1970 to 2019, your average temperature in winter warmed 4.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Can you imagine growing up in 1970 where your average temperature was just above 40? And now you're growing up in today's day and age and you're averaging, anywhere from 47 to above 50 Fahrenheit on average temperature for the winter. I mean, this is significant. And that's why I wanted to include it. Here's some other locations. If you live in any of these other cities across the U.S., Philly, Pittsburgh, Detroit, New York City, Minneapolis, St. Paul, the Twin Cities, Baltimore, Chicago, Boston, Miami. All right, look at this. Now this is average winter temperature. This one's 1970 to 2022. So it's not quite up to date to the current time. It didn't factor in the 22-23 winter probably, or the 23-24 winter. But look at the slope. So let's just say in 1970, you grew up in Philadelphia. Your average winter temperature was 30.3 degrees Fahrenheit. Today, or actually in 2022, it was 39.1. All right. Pittsburgh, you started out in 1970 at 24.9 degrees Fahrenheit average temperature. 2022, it was 32.1. Detroit, 22.4 degrees was your average temperature in winter in 1970. By winter of 22, it was 28. And it just goes on and on and on. I mean, New York City, you're not crazy when you say winters are mild anymore and you don't get much snow, because you're at 30.4 degrees Fahrenheit was your average winter temperature in New York City if you were growing up there in 1970. And now it's 37.1. It rose 7 degrees. It's just incredible to look at these values. And even places as far south as Miami. Look at this. Now, I did look at the data here, and over the same time period, the greatest winter warming cities, by the way, get this. Burlington, Vermont, you have increased your average winter temperature by 6.8 degrees Fahrenheit. Concord, New Hampshire, 5.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 5.5 degrees Fahrenheit. These are how the winters have warmed since 1970 to 2022 period. Vermont, almost 7 degrees. That is impressive. Now that we really dissected the temperature anomalies, let's look at the changes in annual snow. Now, this was also a product created by Brian Brettschneider. Now look at this. This shows you changes in annual snow, the normal snowfall across the U.S., and it compares 1991 to the 2020, the new climatological data set, versus the recent one, the 1980 to 2010. And whenever you see yellow and oranges and reds, that indicates less snowfall on average. Wherever you see the blue coloring, even these darker blue areas, which aren't a lot, that indicates an increase in average snowfall. So you clearly see here across portions of Central Virginia, portions of Western North Carolina, Eastern Tennessee, really big time changes for less average snow across Southern Missouri, Eastern Kansas, Northeast Oklahoma, as well as parts of Arizona, New Mexico. There is less snow. The main area that really stands out to me for less average snow per winter season, based on the changes in the climatological areas, it's going to be this area right here. Southern Missouri, Eastern Kansas, Oklahoma. That really stands out. If you look at snowfall trends using Climate Central data, this is from 1970 to 2023. This shows you annual snowfall trends from that time period, and it generally basically is showing you these are 64% of the stations overall in the contiguous U.S. Are having less snowfall per average or on average per winter season. Less snowfall on average per winter season in all these areas. Again, you can clearly see that southern plains area that I was pointing out in the previous slide. And then as well as a lot of stations up in New York State and Vermont, New Hampshire, portions of the Mid-Atlantic. There's a major cluster of less snow and generally in this area right here. See that? Now, I wanted to really hit this point home on how mild Decembers have become across the U.S. You know, how has the white Christmas probability changed? All right, between 1981 and 2010 climatological data set and the 91-2020, the most recent climatological data set. The song White Christmas, you see it, you hear it on the radio every holiday season. I'm dreaming of a white Christmas just like the ones I used to know. All right, that tells us something right there. People that grew up in the 50s and 60s probably got a lot more white Christmases than people today in the U.S. I mean, when you're singing songs, there are some truth to some of these songs that are sung. So here is the 1981 to 2010 probability of a white Christmas. That means 1 inch of snow, at least 1 inch of snow on the ground at Christmas morning, right? No surprises here in the Deep South, okay, between the data sets. 81 to 2010 on the left, 91 to 2020 on the right. And we're not shocked by this. I mean, that's not changed. But if you notice, between the 81 2010 here, the color scheme here, it shows the percentage probabilities here. It's shifting slowly to the north, the data sets. And I'm going to show you some more here. Some specific cities with the greatest drop-offs in probabilities of white Christmases. Let's start with you in Hartford, Connecticut. Now this one takes into account 1951 to 1980 data set, 1971 to 2000 data set, and the 1991 to 2020 data set. This is all based on climatology of a white Christmas. These are all percentages in these numbers, probabilities of white Christmases. All right, I keyed in on some major cities that have seen significant drops in this. Hartford, Connecticut, in 1951 to 1980, you would have expected a 53% chance of a white Christmas. Well, based on the latest climatological data set, 91 to 2020, you can now expect a 24% chance of a white Christmas. Boston, 1951 to 1980 data set, you could have expected a 1 in 3 chance of a white Christmas, 1 every 3 years, 33%. And now, the 1991 to 2020 data, you now in Boston only have a 10% chance of a white Christmas. Bridgeport, Connecticut, back in 1951 to 1980, you had a 30% probability of a white Christmas. Today, it's 12%. Dulles Airport, there in Washington, D.C., 1951 to 1980, you had a 21% probability of a white Christmas, and now today, it's only 7%. So I'm just showing you the breakdown, and Newark, New Jersey, you're on there, you've dropped from a 30% probability to a 10% probability. Albany has gone from a 50% probability to a 23% probability. Look at Providence, Rhode Island over here. You've gone from a 33% probability of a white Christmas in the 1951 to 1980 data set to only 8% today. And then New York City's on here too. There's Central Park. You've gone from a 17% probability for a white Christmas in the 1951 to 1980 time period to now just a 4% chance. So things have changed significantly. In many cases, and you can see where the focus is, where there's less snow. I mean, it's clearly here in the data showing in the Northeast, in New England, Connecticut, Massachusetts, some of the most significant changes. Maine, Portland, Maine, you've gone from a 77% chance or probability of a white Christmas from 1951 to 1980 to now a 37% chance. New Jersey's on here, New York State, Rhode Island. I mean, you could see how the probability of a white Christmas has dropped off over time. All right, so now a breakdown of my research here. Now, I am only looking at the Mid-Atlantic now when I'm talking about this breakdown of data. Again, I showed you the entire U.S. Hopefully you get something out of it if you live somewhere outside the Mid-Atlantic. But here's Mid-Atlantic data since December 2010, that winter. I looked at 14 total winters, meteorological months, December to February. For December, there were 9 above normal Decembers out of the total 14 winters. That gives us 64% of above normal Decembers. There were 4 below normal Decembers, only 29% of the total 14 winters or Decembers were below normal. And then I had 1 near normal December, which is only 7% of the data. For January, since December 2010, we've had 7 above normal Januaries, 7 of 14, so that's 50% of the Januaries have been above normal. 6 of the Januaries have been below normal, so that's about 43% of the data. And I had 1 near normal January at 7%. So if you look at December, January, and then I'll show you February here in a minute, we'll break that down. But the greatest probability to be the coldest month in any given winter is January. I mean, it's pretty even, 50 to 43%, odds of above versus below normal Januaries. Februaries, 9 Februaries were above normal. So 64% of those Februaries since December 2010 have been above normal for the Mid-Atlantic. Only 4 were below normal at 29%, and then 1 near normal, 7%. So you see December and February going back 14 past winters to 2010, you see December and February have 64% probability of above normal temperatures, and only 29% in December's and February's of being below normal temperatures. January, again, is your best bet if you're going to get in the heart of winter, is going to be your best bet potentially to have a below normal month in the winter. All right, so now let's break the summary down now. Everything we talked about. Here is just some information. We looked at the data. Winter weather is getting warmer, and it's becoming less reliable. Winter is warming faster than any other season across the U.S., specifically the eastern U.S. We've seen that. I showed that graphic showing you, the breakdown of Brian Brettschneider's data for the winter months, December through February, and how the eastern U.S. is warming has warmed 4.5 degrees Fahrenheit since about 1970. And the western U.S. tends to have warmer, trending for warmer summers. The contiguous U.S. has warmed more than 4.5 times faster per decade from 1970 to 2017 than it did over the past 100 years. So this warming is not just gradual warming. This is fairly rapid warming. We're talking about decadal timescales here. So yeah, this is a pretty significant fact. Snowfall events are also decreasing. We should not be surprised with this because we have rising temperatures. More precip is falling as rain by snow in the winter. And that rain-snow line is gradually shifting northward. That climatological rain-snow line is slowly but surely shifting northward across the U.S. One of the bigger reasons we're seeing warmer temperatures is, you're getting less snow. And less snow will lead to less snowpack, which results in less albedo, which albedo is basically reflectivity. You get a fresh pack of snow and it reflects 95% of the incoming solar radiation back to space. You don't have any snow on the ground, all that incoming solar radiation will be absorbed by the surface, resulting in warming. Additional facts: for the warmest Januaries on record have occurred since 2016. Based on warming temps through the end of the century, that snow-rain transition zone through the end of the century could actually shift north by 2 to 5 degrees latitude. Pretty significant. So places now in the climatological data set from 1991 to 2020, in a couple data sets from now, perhaps places that had some sort of average snow in the winter will no longer have it. Outside of major sudden stratospheric warming events and weakened stratospheric polar vortex events, winters have been mild recently. The number of days with temps below 32 degrees Fahrenheit has declined for many locations. Freezing temps are moving northward and along the Atlantic coast toward the interior of the continent. This was from the Professor Emeritus Rood, who did an article in Scientific America. He's a Professor Emeritus at University of Michigan. And then Professor Emeritus Rood also said in his research, for individual storms, the transition to freezing temps, even in the dead of winter, can now be as far north as Lake Superior in southern Canada. And that's just absurd in the heart of winter. We're talking like late December in through late January. Individual storms are pumping up the warmth on their the east sides of the storm with southerly winds, and freezing temps are extending way farther north than they used to. 50 years ago, these areas were reliably below freezing from early December through February. It's almost like a guarantee. About 80% of the US has at least 7 more winter days with above normal temps as compared to 1970. Now, this is data that was provided by Climate Central. Again, a very cool site to check out. Winter around the Pacific Northwest has warmed by 1 degree Fahrenheit. From Southern California through the middle of the country, winter is warmed by about 2 degrees Fahrenheit. Parts of the Midwest and East Coast have warmed up to 5 degrees Fahrenheit. Not all areas, but parts. Certain areas of New York, Vermont, and northern Minnesota, they have seen the greatest warming in the winter, 7 degrees Fahrenheit. And you know what? Out of all of this, yeah, we're still going to see periods of colder weather and snow. Don't get me wrong. Those aren't going away. It does not mean that we will not see winter weather ever again either, but it's been trending to be of shorter duration. The Great Lakes, another key aspect here, the Great Lakes are freezing later in the winter and to a more limited extent as compared to the past 50 years. There's cases where we're seeing, unfrozen water over the Great Lakes into January now. All right. By the way, this is a cool satellite image here showing lake effect snow bands setting up parallel to the prevailing wind across Lake Superior in Michigan into portions of Lake Huron. So this is a cool picture I wanted to share. The open unfrozen lake waters so we don't see icing over the Great Lakes. What happens? The open unfrozen lake waters are adding more moisture to the overlying air. When we do get a cold air outbreak, that results in mammoth snowstorms in those lake effect belt cities, such as Buffalo. Downwind of those unfrozen Great Lakes, when you get very cold air aloft, it increases your lapse rate, your change in temperature, and the vertical with height. We had a case where we had 6 feet of snow in one storm in Buffalo in 2022. You may have remembered that headline. The Arctic, meanwhile, continues to warm very quickly, 3 to 4 times the rate of the rest of the world. What does that do for us? Well, that typically reduces the latitudinal temperature gradient in the winter, results in a slowing of the winds in the jet stream itself. You get more waviness to the jet stream, so you get more of the troughs and the ridges to develop. This results in those troughs and periods of bitterly cold air that you would normally just see confined to the Arctic, but there's been research out there that indicates that we will see some very cold air from the Arctic that normally wouldn't have come this far south in the U.S. But because of this Arctic warming so quickly and the latitude temperature gradient really decreasing, jet stream winds getting weaker, we could see some bouts of bitterly cold air, but again, over shorter duration time periods. And that also could lead to more intense storm systems. All right, that wraps up my video, and I certainly hope you enjoyed it. This one took a while to put together. I do appreciate the kind comments from everybody when you say those kind comments in reply to my videos. I mean, this does take time. I'm doing this on the side in addition to a full-time job, but I just love the weather so much. I really love to share it with everybody out there, and I thought this was an interesting video to share. I mean, the data is the data. But overall, I have another great video after this one. I can't wait to share it with everybody. It's going to be Southeast Ridge and U.S. winters. I looked at winter months which had well above normal temperatures in the east due to the Southeast Ridge really dominating. And I've got a video all ready to go on that. I also have I took an interesting look in my next video at the relationship between the Southeast Ridge in winter and the North Atlantic hurricane season. So I can't wait to share that with everybody. I really hope you find this channel interesting. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for watching. And that's all I got for now. And happy Father's Day, by the way, to all the fathers out there, with Father's Day being tomorrow. So happy Father's Day and enjoy your day to all the dads out there. That's all I got for now, everybody. Until next time, take care and God bless everybody.